Hey guys, this is Ross Ratty, and I want to talk to you a little bit about my raspberries today. These are my raspberries I have in a raised bed. I have three different varieties here. This is a new one that I had just planted. This is a yellow variety. I think it's fall gold. I'm blanking on the name. I have the tag somewhere. This here is Caroline, and Caroline is my best raspberry, best producer, overall best raspberry I have. And then next to that is Heritage, and Heritage has a very good reputation here of being a very reliable and tasty raspberry. You can see that the spacing here is about 2 feet apart, and there's actually quite a nice little space in there that I didn't set out to do myself, but it just happened that way. But the Caroline kind of, I think, has just encroached the yellow raspberry here until the yellow raspberry can get some size to it and hopefully force Caroline back. But what I want to talk to you guys about is that I want to just talk a little bit about training these guys, because there's many ways to do it, and I think the yields I'm getting is quite large. I'm getting raspberries now midway through June, and I'll have them all the way to the end of the year. It won't stop. I'll have them all the way up till the frost. So I think I'm doing something right. Maybe I could get more production out of this, but as it stands right now, I'm pretty happy with really only two plants that have been giving me tons of raspberries. I'm sorry, for a couple years now, and I haven't really had to plant more of them. It's only recently that I decided to plant this other raspberry because my Blackberries, I had 4 of them along here, and those guys were severely attracting SWD. So I'm trying to limit the variety here. I've limited it to, this is Primark Freedom, and we're going to propagate this by just burying the tip. So if you were to take this tip, or take the branch here, or the cane I should say, and bury that in some soil, it will root very quickly. So you don't really want them to sprawl along the ground that way. They'll easily take over. So I like to have them in a raised bed to kind of help keep them off the ground, but also to help kind of contain the roots. So that's one part. The roots will also send out runners, and this is the first year they're really doing that. If I go back here, not really that far away from the plants, there's a raspberry cane coming up back in here, guys. You can see that right there. So not ideal, but the raised bed has certainly contained these roots and limited the amount of work that I have to put in to contain them, for sure. Like, I think it'd be much worse if I didn't do this. The other thing here is that I guess any of the canes that would have popped up along the grass, those would have got mowed over. But anything that's now appearing in these rocks or behind it here that I've mulched and kind of am going to cultivate things in, that stuff I'm going to have to pull up by hand. And even raspberries and blackberries, they'll have runners that come up 15 feet away. So they could easily reach the neighbor's house there, and that wouldn't be fun for anybody. So I think the key here is containing them, but also to keep them off the ground. And I have just a simple trellis system here. We have a T-post here, and we have a 3-wire system going up, sort of like how I would espalier a fruit tree. And then on the ends we have similar posts. These are EMT poles, but I could have easily gotten more T-posts and just hammered them in the ground, and that would have been just as fine. You can see. So there's this wire that goes all the way around, and it really helps, in my mind, to keep these guys contained and not to have them hang down off the side, even though that's kind of what this one's doing. But this one's gonna very quickly fruit for me, and it's not going to really grow much more, and I'm going to cut that cane out. So there's a recycling process here, guys. with the canes, and that's kind of what you need to understand. The same thing happens with the blackberries. And the blackberries, I'm doing this slightly different, okay? So there, like I said in the beginning, there's many different ways to do this, but I'm finding that my way gives me a lot of food in a small space. You know, these were only 2 plants, guys, and they're giving me about a bowl of raspberries every day from now until October. So that's pretty impressive. But the blackberries, I said, they're struggling with SWD, right? They coincidingly ripen with a bad part of the year that I think gets triggered by a shade tree, a cherry tree that I have in the backyard that drops tons of fruit that spoils, and it causes a real problem. I did a video on that, but these blackberries here, I'm kind of letting this one go. But what I had done was, because these guys were really like as tall as the poles almost. I mean, they were like 10 feet tall last year, and they put out an incredible amount of fruit. They're way more vigorous and hard to control than the raspberries, guys. They really are. And they grew so big and put out so many fruits that I couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't pick them all. I couldn't even get in here to get them all. You know, it was just very, very tough to deal with. So what a strategy you can do is, and what I recommend, guys, with the raspberries and the blackberries, okay, you have to get a variety. You don't have to, but if you want more fruit, you're going to want a variety that is a primocane and a floricane variety. So the primocanes are the canes that come up from that first the beginning of the year. So these are new canes coming up from the base. That's really hard to see, but from the base here we have new canes. All of the old canes that were 10 feet tall that would have put out tons of laterals and tons of fruit off of those laterals, I took them out. And a lot of people, they do the same thing, is that if they plant them, you know, somewhere in a row, they'll just mow them down at the end of the year. That helps with disease. It also helps me because I'm only going to get a fall crop, a later season crop off of my blackberries that I'm thinking is going to avoid the SWD. Now, in this particular variety, Primark Freedom, this one is a primocane variety. Now, not all of them, not all blackberries are primocane fruiting, so you have to be careful. In my mind, you want something that is erect. You want it to be something that's going to grow upwards, and you're not going to have to support it too much. This one's going on the ground because what I had done is that I had pinched it. Just like just like figs, guys, you can pinch your blackberries, pinch your raspberries, and once you pinch the tips here, it then sends out all these different laterals, and this will keep the canes smaller, get them to fruit sooner, and you'll have I think a much more controlled crop this way. You know, I'm gonna let the raspberries kind of do their thing. With the blackberries, these guys, I really want to contain them because I know how vigorous they are. So I have one strategy for the blackberries, right? Is we're gonna select new primocanes that come up from the base. We're gonna pinch them at a certain height, probably about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. We'll pinch it. It'll send out new laterals. It'll stay smaller. It'll branch out more. I could even pinch this. So as an example, we pinched it down here, right in that little V here. It's tough to see, but in this V, we pinched it here, and then it grew about another 1.5 feet, and I could pinch this up here if I wanted to. So we could do that and just break that off. I kind of want to see fruit before I do that, but you know, that's another strategy. Really just make this more bushy rather than the way that this is working. And the way that I have this system working, guys, is quite simple. So those new primocanes, again, these are primocane varieties of raspberries. These primocanes come up from the base, and I select 5 of those, no more than 5, okay? 5 of the strongest, thickest, fastest growing limbs. And you can see already by June, these are the new primocanes that are gonna come up, and they're gonna fruit for me at the end of the year. So the primocanes, like I didn't mention this, but they fruit the first year that they exist, okay? Now, these are the floricanes. So these are fruiting for me right now. Now these are going to fruit for me midway through June, probably through midway through July, and then the primocanes will take over shortly after that, maybe in August. So that's what you kind of want to do, is that as soon as these floricanes here fruit, I mean, you know, in pretty good abundance, I should say. Other varieties put out more of a floricane crop. Other varieties put out more of a primocane crop. You're just going to come in here at the base, and you can see the different colors. So there's different colored canes. The green ones are the new ones. Those are the primocanes. We want to keep those. And the brown ones are the old ones. So I'll just cut out the old ones as soon as they're done fruiting. And then we'll have a much more manageable bush. This thing won't be overcrowding the yellow raspberry here that I had mentioned earlier. It'll just be upright and growing in the way that we want it. And at some point here, we should stop the raspberries from getting too out of control. So very soon here, I'll do a little pinch at the top, and then this will come do the same thing as the blackberries, and then the blackberries will and the raspberries, I'm sorry, will do a similar thing as the blackberries. They'll branch out, they'll put out fruit that year, and then the next year they'll do the same thing. As you can see, you know, this is what it'll look like next year. So that's kind of the video, guys. It's very simple training these guys. I think the main things you want to watch out for is containing them. You don't want them to take over your yard. They will. You also want to make sure that you're keeping only 5 canes from the base as your primocanes. Even if you don't have a primocane variety, you want to limit the number of canes so that the next year's crop is more manageable. You can protect it easier. It's not going to be a disease mess. It's not going to be just in general a mess. So we're limiting the number of canes. And that way we're getting 2 different crops all throughout the year. And then the last thing is that if you wanted to do this with your blackberries, you could do it the other way that I'm doing it this year. And we can pinch our blackberries and kind of get them more bushy, more manageable, less wild, less vigorous, and have a crop that is only going to ripen as a fall crop or a late summer crop. So that's kind of it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. I know this probably was a little drawn out, but I'll see you for the next one. All right, take care.